Everyone, 138 MMA here to give you a sneak peek yet again into our UFC 280 full card breakdown that's coming up later this week. For now, we're just going to break down our main event. We have Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. Now, I'm going to go into full detail, give you the analysis, the breakdown, and the prediction on this fight. But don't worry, you're still going to get the prelims all the way through the main card in our full card preview and predictions video that is coming out. If you haven't already watched it, at the end of this video, maybe hop on over to the channel and watch the Peter Yan versus Sean O'Malley breakdown I already did to also give you another sneak peek into this card. But for now, without any further ado, let's get into this fight.
You wanted the picks, you got the picks. The hottest picks in the world.
Here is the event, the main event that everyone is most excited for. We have Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev both coming in 5-0 in their last 5 fights. And this match is really interesting stylistically. I say that because we have a guy who is very, very offensive, no defense whatsoever. In fact, just comes forward with reckless abandon, wants to just get the fight done by any means necessary, doesn't care if he takes any damage along the way, and that is Charles Oliveira. On the other hand, we have Islam Makhachev, who comes in more measured, more calculated approach, trying to win in the safest possible manner, not take any damage. So both guys are polar opposite styles as far as their willingness to take damage, but both guys have similar styles in the fact that both of them really like to grapple, just different styles of grappling. Both guys do have some dynamic striking, just in some different ways, and I'm going to kind of break that down a little bit further. But first, we're going to go ahead and start with the Islam Makhachev side here. So something that's really important in this matchup is Makhachev controls his range on the feet very, very well, and that's going to be important in a fight with Charles Oliveira, who does typically just crash in with reckless abandon, does not give you space. So it'll be interesting to see if Makhachev is able to maintain that range at the range that he wants anyway, which is usually just out of reach of his opponent until he's ready to come in. Now, that's going to be tricky on a guy like Oliveira, who will have a 4-inch reach advantage, as I have written on the board here. But his control of range for Makhachev, he usually keeps it at a very long kicking range because he's not much of a boxer. So for Makhachev, his offense on the feet he does have some really nice kicks. They're very crisp, really technical, but he's not using them a ton for what you would typically use a kick for, which is going for a big knockout. He's using them to keep you at range, and he does that really well. He also makes you afraid to really commit because you know that takedown is there. And Makhachev is a master on takedown entries. Now, if you watch any of his fights, really, because he's pretty much able to take anybody down, the way that he sets these up, the entry is perfect. It's absolutely expert level timed. When he comes in, it's there. He's not getting stuffed very often in a takedown, okay? Something that people overlook is how hard Bobby Green it has been in his career to take down, especially on a first attempt. Makhachev took Bobby Green down pretty damn easily. And I don't say that to say that Bobby Green is bad, because Bobby Green is great. And everybody now is looking back at that fight saying, oh, yeah, it was Bobby Green that you beat, whatever. But leading up to that, how many people, if you go back and watch it, it's on YouTube, how many people were picking Bobby Green to win? A lot of people were saying, Bobby Green's got a real shot here. Bobby Green, he's a real gangster. He's gonna get this win. Makhachev made it look easy. He didn't get hit once. Took him down with ease. Bobby Green is a high-level wrestler. Look back to early Bobby Green fights. That's all he did was wrestle. His early regional scene fights, even early in the UFC, that dude was a wrestler through and through. He didn't until later pick up his boxing. And Makhachev took him down like he didn't know what wrestling was. Now, I'm not saying that Bobby Green is going to be a very good comparison to Charles Oliveira. That's just to say how good the takedowns are for Islam Makhachev. Another thing that I want to point out on the Makhachev side is his cardio. Now, we haven't seen it a lot lately because he's been finishing guys in almost no time. But if you watch some of his earlier fights in the UFC, he was able to go 3 rounds without even looking like he's breathing heavy. And I think that is a testament to his training schedule. And I know that he's big into playing soccer as well, which if any of you, or football if you're not American. So if you're familiar with the game, it is a lot of running, and it's a pretty long game. I do believe it's like an hour and a half of just running. So for Makhachev, he's doing that in addition to his regular MMA training. So a guy like this has the cardio. But like I mentioned, he has that strong kick-heavy offense for when he's on the feet, but that's not good in this matchup. because Oliveira does not give you space. He comes forward reckless abandon, which sometimes is good for him, sometimes it's bad. We'll cover that in just a moment. But this is also his biggest test by far. Charles Oliveira is the best person that Makhachev has faced. He has fought some really good fighters that just aren't getting the name recognition yet or things like that. Like Sarukian is a really good example of that. That was a heck of a fight early in both guys' careers, Sarukian and Makhachev. That was a really good test for Makhachev early on. It was a close fight. A lot of people are arguing that Sarukian won. If you look back at it, I do believe Makhachev won that fight. It was a close fight, but I think a lot of people are just wanting to disagree with a close fight, and that's just the way it is. I understand. I've been there. But for me, Makhachev, this is going to be his toughest test to date. He has not fought anybody of the caliber of Charles Oliveira with the exceptional intangibles that Charles Oliveira possesses. And I'm going to go into those in a moment. But for Islam Makhachev, if he's able to use his wrestling, that'll be his best path to victory. And I know that Oliveira has really good ground skills. We're going to go over those here in a moment. But I think that obviously Islam Makhachev using that Sambo style wrestling is that's what he's good at. That's his best thing. He does have good skills everywhere else. He's a well-rounded fighter, but he's a well-rounded fighter with a very big jolt off in that round. So for example, if we're talking about a wheel, and Makhachev's wheel of his skills, whatever, you're striking, grappling, clinch work, all that stuff, it's a pretty good sized wheel. It's good. And then when you hit that Sambo wrestling style, it just shoots out and comes back because it is. People overlook how good those takedown entries are, and that is what makes that so deadly. But let's look at the Oliveira side for a moment here. I mentioned the 4-inch reach advantage, which is great for Oliveira because he can fight long. And when he does that, he throws those rangy punches and kicks. He does that leaping front kick a lot of the time. And I don't know if you realize, but a 4-inch reach advantage in the hands typically equates to a longer reach advantage in the legs. And a leaping front kick, he's going to be able to reach Makhachev way before Makhachev can reach him. Do I think a leaping front kick's a good idea against a guy like Islam Makhachev who's looking to get that takedown? I don't know, because Oliveira also probably doesn't mind going to the ground. But that leaping front kick, he does it a lot. Long, rangy punches. His lead uppercut that he'll throw, that lead uppercut will almost be at like jab range for Makhachev. And obviously a jab is a straight punch, long arm, whereas that lead uppercut is going to be a bent arm. But it's still going to be with that 4-inch change in advantage or in reach advantage there. Oliveira is going to be able to hit Makhachev with some different shots and different looks way earlier. So that is a big key here. Another thing is he's very aggressive, and I really like that in a fighter. I love the way that Charles Oliveira crashes forward, does not give two craps what you're bringing forward at him. He's coming forward with what he wants to do, and he's going to impose his will upon his opponent. And because he has such a good chin, which I highlighted here, because he has such a good chin, he's able to do this. Now, at some point in his career, that's going to fail him. I don't think we're there yet. I think we've got a while yet before Charles Oliveira's chin just starts falling apart. But it does happen to everybody eventually, especially someone who takes as much damage as Charles Oliveira does. And that's the biggest drawback that I see. He gets a bit reckless. He comes in with his chin up, does not care, and he takes a ton of damage. Something I want to point out. Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, all of these guys, they're able to drop Oliveira, most of them more than once, in their fights. He came very close to getting finished by Michael Chandler. And some of you say, oh, no, he didn't, whatever. If you look at that, the ref was ready to jump in. After Oliveira gets cracked, he's on his hands and knees trying to just move his head out of the way, and Chandler is teeing off. That was close to being stopped. If that wasn't a title fight, that's a prelim fight, I could see a ref stepping in there because he did look really hurt. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think Charles Oliveira was out. I think it would have been an early stoppage, but refs do that sometimes, and it was close. I could see something like that coming down at some point in Oliveira's career where he is really hurt like that, and he's going to look to try and grapple, but for that brief moment before the grappling starts and he's just getting pummeled, yeah, I mean, a ref could jump in, and I wouldn't think it's egregious. It was just a little early. So, in another fight, Dustin Poirier, when he hit him with, I believe it was a right hook, he drops Oliveira. He gets him with the shaky leg and puts him... He looked more hurt in that fight than I think he's been in any of his fights, and that was the Poirier fight. Gaethje able to drop... I mean, that fight was over quick, and Gaethje was able to land some serious damage on Oliveira. So the point is, and I know Makhachev isn't a big puncher, So that might not be the issue here, but I'm just saying the fact that he comes in with such reckless abandon, even a guy like Makhachev who isn't a big boxer or doesn't throw his hands super often, the shots are there. And I don't think he's dumb as a post. So I think he's going to say, okay, well, I might as well throw my hands if this guy's just going to leave his chin up when he comes in. Do I think that Oliveira has a striking advantage? Oh, yeah, by a lot. By a pretty big margin, Oliveira has the striking advantage. But he is hittable, and at some point that's going to come back to bite him. If someone like Michael Chandler, who, yes, he possesses a lot of power, but is very sloppy with his hands, is able to crack Oliveira multiple times, I don't think it's out of the question to think that Makhachev could do the same. So anyway, my point is, I really like the aggression. I like the early threat capabilities of Oliveira. And I think that if this, in the first round, Oliveira is most dangerous in the first round of this fight because he is so violent, which I really like in a fighter, comes forward super solid there. But the longer this fight goes on, the more it's going to favor Makhachev. And the reason I say that, now I'm going to get a lot of people that are jumping on me already. The reason I say that, Oliveira, his best bet on the ground is obviously sneaking a submission. Because why do I say that? Well, a lot of times he works from his back. Not always, but a lot of times. Even in some of the fights that he's winning, he's on his back doing work from there and then tossing up a submission, getting a guillotine. He gets a lot of guillotines. That's kind of his submission go-to. Rear naked chokes as well, which obviously he's not typically on his back in a rear naked choke unless they're on top of him on his back. Either way, point being, if the fight goes longer, you get the sweatiness that the commentators are always talking about, but it does get easier to get out of chokes. And Oliveira is more of a choke artist than he is looking for limbs. He doesn't have a ton of arm bars, doesn't have a ton of leg locks. I mean, yes, he has gotten them, but if you look at his record and you look back, traditionally he's going for chokes. So I don't think it's too controversial for me to say that. For Islam Makhachev, he's very safe in his grappling. I don't think that as the fight goes on, those chokes are going to be there as much as they could be in the first round if, say, Oliveira hurts Makhachev on the feet and is able to get to the ground and sink in a choke. Or just completely knocks him out on the feet. That's possible. Makhachev has been knocked out before. His only loss in his career is via knockout. So, earlier in the fight, Oliveira is very, very likely to be the favorite in that first round, I would say, maybe even into the second round. But the longer the fight goes on, a guy like Islam Makhachev, who fights so safe, so smart, has a very good game plan, the fight slowly starts to turn to his favor. Now, for me in this, I'm going to tell you now my pick is Islam Makhachev. I know a lot of you are thinking I'm crazy. A lot of people are on the Oliveira side, but let me throw this at you. There's two fights that I watched leading up to this that swayed me towards the Makhachev side. One being the Michael Chandler fight that I've already mentioned. Oliveira had Michael Chandler's back in the first round and was not able to get the rear naked choke in. He had it for quite a while. Chandler even did the old stand up and then jump to his back to try to break the hold or whatever, and usually it just gives the other guy a better shot at your neck. Chandler even did that, and Oliveira was not able to get the submission. I think Makhachev is a safer grappler than Michael Chandler. Now, Michael Chandler is good, don't get me wrong. The guy's never been submitted in his career. Either has Makhachev, so there's that. I think Makhachev is a better top position grappler than Chandler, although Chandler is very good. Like I said, Makhachev I think is better. Chandler was not in danger once he got on top. The attempts at submissions from the bottom from Oliveira were not legitimate attempts. Chandler was able to brush them off and land some serious ground and pound at times. It was nasty at moments. Now, I don't think that Makhachev has the nasty style like Chandler does, where he's dropping big, heavy bombs, but he's safe, and he's not going to get choked out or caught in an armbar or anything like that from Oliveira on his back, especially if Michael Chandler was not. So, my point is, Makhachev's going to be banking rounds if Oliveira ends up on the ground, on his back. I see that. Another fight. Now, I know this fight ended in submission in favor of Charles Oliveira, but the Kevin Lee fight. Kevin Lee, we all know, really just didn't live up to expectations. But this fight was a good gauge for me because even though Kevin Lee got caught in a guillotine, it was off of a takedown where he just kind of gave up his neck. Makhachev doesn't give up his neck on takedowns. But earlier in that fight, Kevin Lee was able to stay on top, Oliveira threatened with leg locks, looked for some arm bars, looked for all sorts of things. Kevin Lee, who is a good wrestler, Makhachev is a better wrestler, Kevin Lee's a good wrestler, was able to stay comfortably on top of Oliveira. Even the commentators at the end of, I think it was round, was it round 1 or 2? Now I'm blanking, but either round 1 or 2, even the commentators were saying that it was strange that Oliveira's corner thought Oliveira won that round when Kevin Lee had the top control the whole time and was landing some pretty good hammer fists from the top. Nothing devastating, but enough that maybe you give it to the guy on top, because that's traditionally how judges score a fight. So for me, I think Makhachev has a more likelihood of winning this fight. Do I think the odds are starting to get away? No, not really. I saw Makhachev as low as -170 on a couple of sites. I think he's -185 most places. I think Makhachev should be somewhere around -200. So I think those are still playable. I do think there's a serious path to victory for Oliveira. I do think it's in the striking department more than the grappling. A club and sub is possible. But for me, I'm leaning Islam Makhachev. Now, I know this is going to be a controversial one. There's a lot of emotionally invested people in this fight because Charles Oliveira is a very likable figure. Don't get me wrong. I like Charles Oliveira. I think he's a fun fighter to watch. I was rooting for him in the Poirier fight, So for me, it's just tough to pick against a guy who stylistically the matchup favors. Combat Sambo style has typically won out over jiu-jitsu. We see that throughout a lot of fights in the UFC. Islam Makhachev is one of the best at that combat Sambo style. And on the feet, he has a better control of his range than a lot of those Sambo style guys. So for me, I think Makhachev is a clear pick here. I know that there is a big path to victory, like I said. So if you have Charles Oliveira, please, in the comments, let me know. And let me know why you think that, how you think he's going to get it done, what holes you've seen in Makhachev's game that make you think that. Or maybe you just think that because if Makhachev hasn't fought anybody of this level or this caliber. And if so, let me know that as well. If you've enjoyed this video, if you like my breakdown, the marker board style that I like to do, if you like this, please toss a like on this video. Maybe subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more of these. And check out my Peter Yan versus Sean O'Malley breakdown, because that one is another little hype fest for the upcoming UFC 280 card. But this is just my sneak peek video. There will be a full card preview and predictions breakdown coming up very soon. But like I said, like the video, and I'll see you in the next one.